Imagine you're just, sitting in your room. The hum of your environment is totally normal. The lighting is soft. You're comfortable maybe reading a book or working at your desk.
Right, just a totally standard, mundane day.
Exactly. And then, without even a fraction of a millisecond of warning, the floor just violently lurches out from under you.
Oh,
You're
man.
literally thrown into the wall, and the sound of stressed metal shrieks through the building like this living, wounded thing. Red klaxons start blaring.
That is just instant panic.
It really is.
Yeah.
Every single instinct in your body tells you that you are under heavy attack. But when you look at the window, there's no enemy.
Nothing at all.
No incoming fire. There's literally just empty space.
See, that is total sensory overload combined with just absolute blinding vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because when your brain receives the physical input of an attack, but your eyes literally cannot locate the predator, the human nervous system practically short circuits. It's the ultimate nightmare scenario for any crew navigating the unknown.
And that terrifying disconnect is exactly where we're starting today's deep dive. We're looking at this really fascinating stack of declassified sources.
Some incredible material in there.
Truly. Narrative logs, personal diaries, and these after-action mission reports from the crew of the Starfleet vessel USS Arawyn.
Which is such a wild read.
It really is. And our mission today isn't just to, catalog the tactical mechanics of surviving a spaceship battle. We're looking at these logs as a profound study in human resilience.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to explore leadership under this extreme, isolating pressure and the highly unconventional, sometimes totally counterintuitive ways a crew processes trauma. When the traditional rulebooks just burn up in the first 5 seconds of combat.
Because the Arawyn's logs are honestly a masterclass in crisis management, they totally refuse to sanitize the experience.
Right, they don't sugarcoat it at all.
Not even a little. They show us this required, delicate balance between cold, calculated survival logic, like the math of keeping a hull intact, and the raw, messy human emotion that you actually need to keep the crew functioning.
So let's break down that initial ambush in the Nabharak Shoals, because the physics of it are just brutal. Operations tracks 46 perfect impact vectors hitting the Arawyn in a 6-second window.
6 seconds? That's just wild.
Right, and the tactical officer, Grayson McKinney, he's staring at the sensor arrays. There are no warp trails, no impulse exhaust, no heat signatures from cloak
It's
shifts.
just nothing.
They are just surrounded by floating rocks. Yet the ship is being systematically dismantled.
And the genius and really the horror of that specific strike pattern comes down to this concept called grid fatigue.
Okay, break that down for us.
So ship shielding isn't a solid wall of energy, right? It functions a lot more like a tension net. If a single massive torpedo hits one section, the rest of the grid dynamically shifts power to that local area to absorb the blow.
Okay, so it flexes.
Exactly. But 46 simultaneous, perfectly spaced micro impacts strip the system of its ability to adapt. It's basically like trying to catch 46 bullets with a trampoline. The tension system simply shatters because it just cannot route the power fast enough.
Man, that trampoline analogy makes it so clear. And that external violence instantly creates this massive internal catastrophe.
Oh, absolute chaos.
Down in the engineering bay, bulkheads are blown out. The chief engineer, Harlan, is critically injured by falling debris.
Which is the worst possible timing.
Right. And this leaves a junior officer, Ryan Collingway, abruptly in charge. He's staring at failing plasma conduits, localized fires, the bodies of his own crewmates.
Just a total nightmare for a junior officer.
And the structural integrity of the ship is failing. So Ryan is essentially paralyzed by the sudden, massive weight of command.
Which is completely understandable. It's a leadership vacuum created in literally milliseconds.
Yeah.
When a human being is thrust into that level of sudden catastrophic responsibility, high-level cognitive processing often just shuts down.
Like a freeze response.
Exactly. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex problem-solving and math, it gets hijacked by the amygdala. The brain just loops in fight, flight, or freeze. And Ryan is freezing.
So in steps Allura Wren, the Director of Morale, Welfare, and Recreation.
MWR.
Right, MWR. And she isn't a tactical officer. She isn't an engineer. She was literally thrown to the floor of her quarters when the attack happened.
But she gets up.
She forces herself up, walks into these amber-lit corridors, and assesses the chaos. And she knows engineers run on coffee.
Of course they do.
But not the perfectly synthesized replicator stuff.
Yeah.
Real, imperfect, intensely strong coffee.
The good stuff.
Yeah. So she physically builds a functional coffee cart amidst all the sparks and the smoke. and she rolls it directly to the front lines of the engineering bay.
See, this is brilliant. She basically bypasses the technical crisis and treats the biological crisis.
Handing a traumatized engineer a cup of coffee.
Right. Handing him a hot cup of real coffee isn't about caffeine at that point. It's a brilliant piece of somatic grounding.
Somatic grounding. Like pulling him into his body.
Exactly. The intense, familiar smell of the roasted beans, the physical heat of the mug radiating into his palms, that bitter taste. These are potent, tangible sensory inputs.
That snaps him out of it.
It forces the brain out of its panic loop and back into the present physical moment. It literally restarts the human operating system.
Wow. It's like giving him a physical totem to prove he's still alive.
That's a great way to put it.
But she goes a step further. She pulls Ryan into Commander Harlan's office, which is the only undamaged room in the bay.
Right.
She shuts the door, blocking out the screaming alarms, and tells him he doesn't have to be the brave commander in that specific room. She gives him exactly 60 seconds to completely break down, to cry, to process the sheer terror.
And creating that container is a phenomenal leadership intervention.
Really? Isn't it risky to let him break down?
Not in this way. If she tells him everything is going to be fine, she loses all credibility because they might literally be dead in 10 minutes.
Oh, true. Good point.
By establishing a physical boundary at her Harlan's office, she gives him a safe space to shatter. He purges the paralyzing fear for 1 minute so that when he opens that door and steps back out onto the floor, he can rebuild his armor.
And be the immovable object his engineers desperately need to see.
Exactly.
And that 60 seconds of emotional purge is really the only reason Ryan is able to tackle the mechanical nightmare waiting for him.
He needed that reset.
Because while he's pulling himself together, the bridge crew is finally solving the mystery of the invisible enemy.
Finally.
Yeah, McKinney and Captain Corbin trace the thermal spikes of the impacts and realize they aren't fighting a cloaked armada. They're sitting inside a 3,000-year-old automated distributed mesh network.
Which is just terrifying.
Every single asteroid in the Nabharak Shoals is an independent weaponized node.
It's essentially the galaxy's most aggressive, decentralized border wall. We're talking about swarm logic here.
So no main ship to shoot at.
Right. There is no central command ship to target. It functions way more like a biological immune system. The asteroids communicate with their immediate neighbors using complex algorithms, collectively shifting and targeting based on localized threats.
Man, down in engineering, the reality of that immune system is taking its toll. The ship's battery drops to 13%.
They're running out of time.
Fast. Ryan realizes the shields will completely collapse in 15 minutes. So the only way to generate enough power to survive is to perform a cold start of the warp core.
Oh, wow. A cold start.
Yeah, he has to manually heat the chamber to over 2 million Kelvin and manually collide matter and antimatter to spark the reactor.
To understand the sheer terror of a cold start, you really have to look at the physics of antimatter.
Okay, lay it on us.
Normally, a ship's computer painstakingly weaves this intricate magnetic containment field to ensure the matter and antimatter only annihilate each other in the exact center of the chamber.
Right, it's super precise.
Exactly. Doing it manually means Ryan is basically trying to strike a match in a room full of gasoline, while simultaneously trying to manually build a cage out of magnets to contain the explosion before it vaporizes the entire ship.
That sounds impossible.
It requires microscopic precision under absolute apocalyptic stress.
But he pulls it off. Baked in sweat, his hands shaking, he sparks the core just 2 minutes before the batteries die.
Incredible.
Power floods the ship. Operations reports that shields are stabilizing and, crucially, the Arawyn's torpedo banks are fully loaded and hot.
They've got their teeth back.
Right. But wait, if the guns are back online and they are surrounded by automated rocks that just killed their crew, why not just blast a hole through the field and warp out? Like, they have the power now.
Because that is exactly what the algorithm wants them to do.
Really?
McKinney realizes the terrifying elegance of the trap. If you fire a torpedo at one rock, you don't blind the system. You just alert the other 10,000 rocks in the mesh network.
Oh, it acts like a beacon.
Exactly. Firing a weapon creates a massive thermal and electromagnetic spike. Attempting to engage the warp drive does the exact same thing. The system is designed to respond to aggressive energy signatures with overwhelming instantaneous force.
So Captain Corbin deduces that the network isn't actually trying to destroy them outright anymore.
Right.
It's interrogating them. It's pinging their hull with low-frequency sweeps, reading their electromagnetic profile.
Scanning them.
Yeah, and when the Arawyn locked its shield harmonics to absorb the blows, but deliberately refused to return fire, the ancient algorithm categorized them.
It did the math.
It recognized the lack of an aggressive response and classified the ship as a non-hostile anomaly.
Because the immune system only attacks pathogens that act like pathogens.
Oh, wow.
The moment they behave like an inert object, the system stops treating them as a threat.
So the only way out is absolute terrifying stillness. They have to power down the impulse engines and literally drift out of the kill box on microscopic thruster bursts.
Just sitting in near total silence.
Just hoping the 3,000-year-old math doesn't suddenly change its mind.
Drifting in the dark, surrounded by the weapons that just murdered your friends, totally unable to fight back.
It's chilling.
The psychological discipline required to maintain that stillness is staggering.
It really is. But they do clear the lattice. The ship survives.
Thank goodness.
But, as the acute danger fades and the adrenaline drains out of the crew's bloodstream, they are forced to look around at the actual cost of their survival.
And that's when it hits them.
Yeah. This transition from the violent noise of combat to the quiet aftermath is where the logs get incredibly heavy.
Because the immediate aftermath of a crisis is often way more dangerous psychologically than the event itself.
Wait, really? More dangerous?
Oh, absolutely. During the attack, the body's survival instinct overrides everything. You don't have time to grieve or process.
You're just trying to live.
Right. But once you're safe, the neurochemical floodgates just open, and the reality of the trauma rushes in all at once.
Which explains what happens down in the medical bay. The triage is totally chaotic. Counselor Nick Miller, whose entire background is in treating minds, finds himself elbow deep in physical trauma.
He's out of his element.
He grabs a basic med kit and starts stitching up minor lacerations and treating burns. On the surface, it just looks like a guy trying to make himself useful because he doesn't know what else to do.
But if you look closer at his methodology, it's brilliant.
Well, so.
Miller knows the surgeons have to focus on the life-threatening injuries, right? By taking the ambulatory cases, he is actually performing psychological triage under the guise of physical first aid.
Oh, that's smart.
As he cleans a wound, he forces the crew member to make eye contact. He speaks in a slow, rhythmic cadence. He is treating people who are physically in the med bay, but mentally they're still trapped on the engineering floor watching the bulkheads collapse.
So he's grounding them too?
Yes. He uses the physical treatment as a bridge to pull their minds back to safety.
Meanwhile, the chief medical officer, Dr. Rhea Amberlin, has the grim task of processing the casualties.
The hardest job.
Yeah. And she refuses to just input their ID numbers into the casualty report.
Yeah.
In her personal log, she catalogs the deeply mundane, beautiful specifics of the people they lost.
Those little details.
Exactly. She notes that Petty Officer Melinda Willman had this incredibly lyrical singing voice, and she was the one who used to smuggle the doctors real coffee.
Oh, wow.
She documents another crewman's absolute obsession with the ship's feline welfare group.
Dr. Amberlin is actively fighting against the clinical reduction of human life here.
That's a great way to put it.
Because in a military or survival context, dead crewmates can very quickly become statistics,
Rah.
just numbers on a damage report.
Right, to make it easier to process.
Exactly. By actively documenting their quirks, their habits, the small things that made them human, she preserves the institutional memory of the crew. It's basically an act of defiance against the cold, unfeeling nature of the universe that just took them.
And that phrase, institutional memory, leads perfectly into the most striking visual in the entire stack of sources.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about.
It is late at night. The crisis is over. Captain Corbin is sitting alone in the dim lighting of her quarters.
Such a stark contrast.
Right. Because we just saw her on the bridge, projecting absolute, unwavering certainty. Now she's sitting in silence, drinking neat, unreplicated scotch, petting her cat, Ptolemy, and writing physical letters to the families of the 3 dead crew members.
The isolation of command is rarely captured this vividly.
It feels like the quiet after a car crash is somehow louder than the crash itself.
Yeah. The crew gets to rely on each other for support, but the captain sits at the apex of the hierarchy. There is no one above her to absorb the weight of those decisions.
And in her diary, she admits a deep sense of failure. Not a tactical failure, but a human one. She writes that she didn't know their faces well enough.
That's heavy.
She says, "We entered that field with intent. We did not expect it to cost us anything. That assumption was wrong." She is taking the full blame for an ambush by an automated rock. You'd think a leader would want to rationalize it so they can sleep at night,
Yeah.
Just chalk it up to bad luck and an ancient algorithm.
But rationalizing it would be the first step toward becoming exactly like the algorithm that attacked them.
Cold and detached.
Cold, calculating, and detached from the value of a life. Corbin doesn't drink the scotch to numb her mind. She drinks the good scotch to feel the physical burn in her chest.
She wants to feel it.
She deliberately anchors herself to the pain of the loss. True leadership demands that you internalize the cost of your commands.
Because if you don't...
The moment a leader stops feeling the physical and emotional weight of the people who die under their orders is the moment they lose their humanity. And by extension, their right to command the living.
You have to own the ghost, or you lose the soul of the ship.
Exactly.
But while Corbin is sitting in that heavy, necessary silence, her tactical officer realizes the rest of the crew cannot afford to sit in quiet reflection.
Not at all.
They need an entirely different, aggressive kind of intervention.
And Grayson McKinney's actions 2 days after the attack represent one of the most brilliant applications of somatic experiencing therapy you will ever find in a tactical log.
It's wild. McKinney commandeers Holodeck 3 and throws a massive, claustrophobic, neon-drenched EDM club night.
A full-blown rave.
Yeah, he cranks the temperature in the room up 10 degrees. The bass is so heavy it is literally vibrating the deck plates. Lasers are slashing through thick artificial fog.
Just total sensory overload again.
And McKinney is up in the DJ booth, but he isn't just playing music. He's treating the audio mixer like a tactical console, running threat assessments on the dancers.
It honestly sounds like madness on paper.
Right.
You take a crew that just survived flashing red lights, deafening explosions, and violent vibrations, and you put them in a hot, dark room with flashing lights, deafening bass, and shaking floors.
Hold on. That's exactly my question reading this. Putting a traumatized crew back into an environment that perfectly mimics the sensory overload of the attack, doesn't that seem like a guaranteed recipe for a mass panic attack?
You would think so.
Like, why deliberately trigger the PTSD?
Because human biology often lacks a physical mechanism to discharge extreme stress.
What do you mean?
Well, when an animal in the wild escapes a predator, you will often see it physically shake for several minutes to burn off the excess cortisol and adrenaline.
Oh, like a dog shaking off water.
Exactly. But humans tend to freeze. We internalize the trauma. The Arawyn's crew survived, but their nervous systems are still bracing for an impact.
They're stuck.
They are stuck in an unclosed stress loop. McKinney is acting like a technician overclocking a frozen computer to force a reboot.
Wow. Overclocking the nervous system.
He recreates the intense sensory input of the trauma, the heat, the noise, the vibration, but he strips away the danger. He replaces the context of imminent death with the context of community and rhythm.
It is sonic surgery.
It really is.
The logs describe him scanning the crowd. He sees crewman Weber, paralyzed against the wall by survivor's guilt, completely dissociated.
Just checked out.
Yeah. McKinney gets on the mic, calls him out by name, and drops a massive sub-bass sequence. The physical crowd basically surges and absorbs Weber, dragging his consciousness back into his body.
That's incredible.
Then McKinney spots engineer Allenson. She is out on the floor, her jaw clenched, literally shadowboxing the ghosts of the collapsing bulkheads.
Because McKinney sees that she is still physically fighting the battle.
Right.
So he cuts the high-end, piercing synths and maxes out the low-frequency sub-bass. He uses the sheer acoustic pressure of the sound waves to vibrate the tension directly out of her muscle tissue.
That is just brilliant.
He bypasses her conscious auditory processing and interacts directly with her nervous system, forcing her muscles to unclench.
He is letting them physically scream out the adrenaline. And there's this incredible detail where Dr. Dunross, the assistant medical officer, pokes her head into the holodeck. She looks at the chaos, looks up at McKinney sweating in the booth, gives a faint nod of professional respect, and leaves.
She gets what he's doing.
Because Counselor Miller is already inside, leaning against the wall, just watching the crowd. Miller and McKinney share a look. They're both running triage. They're just using entirely different toolkits to get the crew back to baseline.
And once McKinney observes the shift in the room, once the manic, frantic energy burns off and the crew finally physically exhausts the trauma, he expertly alters the environment.
He brings it down.
He bleeds out the harsh pounding bass. He pulls back the strobes and shifts the lasers to warm, slow amber light. He layers in thick analog funk.
Ah, nice.
He guides their heart rates down and basically gives the collective nervous system of the ship permission to exhale.
It perfectly encapsulates the entire bizarre, beautiful journey of the Arawyn.
It really does.
Think about what we've covered. They survive a hyper-advanced algorithmic ambush. Not by firing a bigger weapon, but by weaponizing absolute disciplined stillness.
Right.
They survive the internal collapse of their engineering bay with a hot cup of unreplicated coffee. And they survive the lingering psychological devastation, not with quiet meditation, but with 140 beats per minute bass drop.
It's the ultimate testament to the reality of exploration. I mean, the titanium hull, the shield harmonics, the warp core, those technologies will keep the vacuum of space out.
Yeah.
But it is empathy, tactile connection, and sometimes a profoundly loud subwoofer that keeps the human mind from fracturing in the dark.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I really want you listening to apply this to your own environment. When the alarms go off in your world, when the systems fail and you're suddenly thrust into a crisis, who is the person bringing you the real coffee?
Good.
Who is pulling you into a quiet room and giving you 60 seconds to just fall apart? And just as crucially, when the crisis is finally over, how do you actively purge the adrenaline? How do you complete your own stress cycle so you aren't carrying the ghosts of that battle in your muscles for the rest of your life?
And I would leave you with one final, broader question to ponder about the nature of the trap itself.
Let's hear it.
The mesh network in the Nabharak Shoals was constructed 3,000 years ago. It continued to operate on cold, unfeeling, perfectly executed math millennia after the civilization that built it vanished into dust.
It completely outlived its creators.
Exactly. So if an alien explorer were to stumble upon humanity's automated digital defenses, like our firewalls, our algorithms, our autonomous networks thousands of years from now, what would those algorithms tell them about who we were?
Oh, wow.
What would our codes say about what we valued most, and more importantly, what we were most terrified of?
The systems we leave behind are the ultimate reflection of our fears. That is a thought that will stick with you long after the adrenaline fades. Until our next deep dive, remember to keep your shields adaptable, your coffee incredibly strong, and your base turned up.